How's it going, everyone? I hope you're doing well today. So Tszyu is going to take on Bria Mendoza. This is an interim unification, if you will, but it will be for the WBO belt, which Tszyu will be elevated to by the time this fight happens, October 15th. And Jaime Munguia and Edgar Berlanga kind of need each other right now. I think that's a fight that makes perfect sense. Let's talk about it.
Boxing.
Alright, shout out to all the subscribers. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. And shout out to anybody new locked in. Let's talk about these fights, okay? The 154 division, they are getting it on, okay? Because the same undercard as Jamel Charlo and Canelo, you have Erickson Lubin taking on Jesus Ramos. Now, I'll get onto that in a minute because Jesus Ramos has already beaten Mendoza. And Mendoza and Fundora just fought. Now Tszyu and Mendoza. This is the 154 division is heating up, and you know the 168 division is a nice division too. But there are fights like Jaime Munguia versus Edgar Berlanga, excuse me, which makes so much sense right now for both parties. It's a question of like right now for me, it's like okay, this is the fight where if you're a promoter, Eddie Hearn and Oscar De La Hoya, now's the time to believe in your fighter, because this is a risk reward type fight, okay? Because you know Berlanga's talking about fighting Canelo, and you know I'm not really a fan of you fighting a bunch of B level fighters, no disrespect to them, and then just because you win then get the Canelo fight. I get it, it's a business, but you know at some point you got to take a heavier risk. And same with Munguia, you know, and both fighters right now, you know, Munguia is coming off an entertaining fight against Derevyanchenko, but all these fights that they've had, they've all been favored to win these fights. And obviously Munguia's a former world champion, but he's up at 168 now. And if you look at the landscape, you've got your Plants, you've got your Benavides, you've got, you know, Canelos. But below that, you've got these guys, Munguia, Berlanga, David Morrell. No one's really going to be calling him, let's be honest. I don't think his manager's phone's going to be going off. He's a tough fight. So then you've got Shishkin, the Russian, who's a good fighter, but, you know, doesn't really have a name and doesn't really have, you know, the clout or the excitement just yet, perhaps in a year or two. And then you've also got Diego Pacheco. And I don't think they're going to want to call him because that's a high risk, low reward. So they're made for each other. These guys are made for each other. So hold on one sec, I've got to just charge my phone because it's bleeping at me. All right, there we go. They're made for each other, you know, they are. This is a great fight. I saw a tweet the other day, or maybe it was an Instagram post from I forgot his name. He goes by the boxing bully, you know, Akim Barak, one of those guys. I forget which one, apologies, but he tweeted out you know, this fight, apparently it's in talks right now, but you know how deep the talks are and how realistic the fight is of getting made, I don't know. But De La Hoya came in and said, you know, they don't want it, you know, the usual blame the other side tactics from the promoter. But I certainly hope that fight is close to getting made, or would get made, because like I said, it makes perfect sense. And you do have to take risks in this. I know it is a business and you can do what you need to do, but at some point you're gonna have to move forward with it. And that would be a sellout fight if it was on the West Coast or on the East Coast here in New York City. So that it just makes a lot of sense, and it would be a great fight as well. You know, I know Berlanga's typically a pressure fighter and comes forward, and you know he has had criticisms recently. And his fight against Quigley, look, he got the job done. He dropped him 4 times, and Quigley's quite a slippery character. And you know, Berlanga does look for one shot a bit too much. But when you have like, I think the thing with his opponents, like that have made him look, you know, a bit less average, is because they know about his power and they get very defensive. And Gulo, though, he was pushing Berlanga back quite a bit, and Berlanga was fighting off the back foot a lot. So he you know, I'd expect Munguia to probably do the same thing, but nonetheless, he's going to be well aware of Berlanga's power And you know, Munguia is in an entertaining fight. He's not scared to get hit, and he can take a punch, sort of. He gets hurt, but he always comes back. But it just makes for a marvelous matchup. I really think they should make that fight, and you know, put a notice on the 168 division again. Take note. That's why I'm making this video together, because you know, the 154 pounders, some of the lightweights. You know, I was chatting to some guy on Monday. I was working on Monday. I was at this gig, and this guy, after I finished, he was talking to me about boxing. He's like, you know, why don't these fighters fight each other? Why don't the top guys fight each other? I was like, what are you talking about? They do. Like, we just had Haney Loma, Benavidez Plant, Tank Garcia, Spence Crawford. You know, there's probably one or two other, you know, Yard and Biev, that was a good fight. And, you know, these 154 pounders are getting it back on and moving on to that, because this is exciting. You know, these are the top guys are trying to slowly like taking note from the other big fights, because it's been an exciting year for boxing. There's no two ways about that. It really has. And I think this is a really good fight. Tszyu, who's had some good wins recently, you know, he not proved me wrong, but he put a good performance. Well, I guess he did, yeah. I thought Tony Harrison was going to beat him. I thought going into that fight, Harrison was really like in a good place, healthy mental place. Not that he hasn't been in before, but I just felt his energy from, like, you know, you can really tell when people are training and putting a good word out, and then he got to Australia and he just, I just don't know if it was Tszyu was just too good, too powerful, and too sneaky. He's got a sneaky counterpunch on him, as well as being aggressive and powerful, strong, and he can punch. And Mendoza is coming off a terrific win, where a sensational knockout against Fundora. That was a great punch where a fight he was losing. And that's how I thought the fight was going to go. I thought Mendoza was going to, you know, just kind of, you know, he's a silky boxer, you know what I mean? He can fight, he can box, and he can bang a little bit. He's got a punch. So, but he caught Fundora out of the blue with a beautiful feint jab, left hook, and put him to the canvas, and he shot him a shot on the way down as well. But he wasn't favored in that fight. I think he was the underdog against Jerson Rosario. Came out with a beautiful uppercut out of nowhere. And since he's been with Ismael Salas, he's been praising Salas, and I know he lost a couple of fights. He lost against Jesus Ramos in 2019 or something like that, and he lost the previous fight not the previous, but before that he's lost again. But he's convinced. He's moved out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's in Vegas now, and he's found his mojo again, you know, or he's found his mojo, and he's feeling good, and he's going down to Australia because he really believes in himself, and he's taking on Tszyu, a tough challenger, and he's happy, he's smiling, he's grateful, and he's really all about it. And he just said, we just made the fight. We were just like, yeah, okay, no promoters got in the way. We just talked and we just made it happen. I'm sure promoters got in the way a little bit because they have to make the fight, but essentially, you know what I mean. The fighters were like, let's go. And that's a healthy, good attitude to have. And that's how really good fights get made quickly, you know, from both sides. And Tszyu has that same sort of energy, you know. And I love it. It's great for the sport. It's great for us fans to just get these out of the blue good fights, you know, because hopefully it makes other people step up. And we just hopefully get some kind of announcement on the Munguia Berlanga fight, because I've heard, even before I saw that tweet or Instagram post I was talking about, I'd heard about that fight in the talks, because like I mentioned, the landscape of 168, Gabe Rosado's retired, you know what I mean? He would have been a good replacement, I think, a couple years ago to fight Berlanga. I know Munguia's already fought him and, you know, won a competitive but entertaining fight. Rosado's always in those. But Berlanga, really and truly, I don't want to see him in anyone where he's just expected to just win again. You know, he's put himself in position. He's beat who he's needed to beat. That's fair enough, but it's time for a step up. You know, and that the step up, if you're going to talk about fighting Canelo, that's too much of a step up. And, you know, as much as it's great to get a big payday, as boxing fans, we really want to see competitive fights. And Berlanga Canelo right now would not be competitive in my opinion. But Munguia Berlanga would be. I think that's a terrific fight. And like I said, Mendoza and Tszyu, they snuck a press conference in yesterday. It's just out of the blue. It's in I think it was, the fight's in Australia, but maybe Mendoza wasn't there yet, but it was out of the blue press conference. They kept it quiet, but nonetheless, fight's on. All right, for Tszyu, who will be the WBO champion by then because he would have been elevated. That would be Jamel Charlo's belt. I don't know exactly how it works or why, but it's great. You know, Mendoza gets an opportunity to fight for a world title. Tszyu becomes champion, and on we go. But that is it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on both of these fights, and hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and hit the subscribe button if you're new. I've got loads more videos coming. I'm still doing this Uzbek documentary. It's a really big documentary I'm doing. It's taking a lot of work, and I'm doing other stuff as well. That is still coming. I know I've said I was going to put it out last week. I've got to stop putting a time date on it because I never meet it. Anyway, I hope you guys are well. Have a great week. It is a terrible day in here in New York City. The summer has not felt like summer, but I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to go for a run and enjoy the rest of my day. I hope you do. I hope you do too. Peace and love. I'm out of here.